Okay, there we go. Hopefully this will work a little better. Sorry about that. Had a little glitch. My bad. Let me start over again. So I was saying that people know I have a blog, 3 a.m. Philosophy, and the reason why I named it that way is because I actually do this at 3 a.m. And at 3 a.m., of course, it's early in the morning. I'm tired, but I just kind of throw stuff out there and kind of see what I can suss out of it. Oh, hang on. I had a replay on that video. And so I was in this Facebook group that they were talking about agnostic atheism once again. And so I was like, okay, maybe once and for all, I can explain to people why this is such a ridiculous diagram. But I want to do so in a way that makes sense, straightforward, that is both syntactically and logically viable to show people that this diagram is just crap. And I think I came up with a way to do it. However, again, as many times as I can prove this myself, errors always seem to creep in. I'm not one to say that my stuff is not flawed. Of course it is. But what I do is I go through it multiple different times. I make multiple revisions, multiple edits to make sure that my arguments are pretty sound. That's how I came up with the WASP argument and the atheist semantic collapse argument, because I had people challenge it. I had people, try to poke holes in it. Then I kind of shorted up here and I've changed it there. And they're pretty resoundingly, I think, solid. So I want to kind of do the same thing here, but I wanted you guys' help, because if you guys can poke holes in this, then, obviously the atheists in these Facebook groups have nothing that they can refute. So I wanted your guys' help. I am not going on camera. I'm drinking coffee, so bear with me. And I still got my dry cough. So the way I started this out was pretty simple. And I'll be going through this from the Google Doc, and then I'm going to try to put it on my blog if you guys don't find any errors. So as soon as you guys see an error, you guys see something you want to stop and talk about, let me know. So I basically said, I wanted to give some quick notes on the use of this epistemological image, which people can use, comma. This is why I do this, so comma. When I read it out loud, it's better, and I feel weird reading out loud when I'm not actually speaking into me. When it comes to quickly pointing out a few glaring issues, with such a multi-axial approach to having the x-axis of having a x-axis of knowledge and a y-axis of beliefs. Okay, so how's that so far? I wanted to give some quick notes on the use of this epistemological image, comma, Cheshire lecture commas, which people can use when it comes to quickly pointing out a few glaring issues with such a multi-axial approach, comma, having a x-axis of knowledge and a y-axis of beliefs. I just say belief. All right, that worked so far, guys? Never mind, of course, the fact that I can't seem to find a single solitary publication which this diagram or any other college has in its curriculum. Let me get rid of that. Never mind, of course, the fact that I can't seem to find a single solitary publication which has this diagram. I'm going to put contain. Oh, help me word this properly, guys. These diagrams. I'm going to be inclusive diagrams. Or any other college that has it in its curriculum. Okay. So far, so good, guys? These diagrams seemingly are just created by... these diagrams seemingly were just created by someone who really didn't think critically about the logic very thoroughly or very well at all when they created it. So far, so good. People who continue to use it seem to think that the logic, people who continue to use it seem to fail to think that logic through either. Put some ellipses there. Hopefully, once you see them, once you see the glaring issues with it, you'll stop using it, and recognize them as being epistemologically untenable. All right, how's no comma after image? You can lose the word which though. No comma after image. Where's that? Yeah, chemo. I'm with you, buddy. No comment after image. Okay, I gotcha. I'm gonna remove that, and then remove which. Okay, you guys are helping me write my blog. I wanted to give some quick notes on the use of this epistemological image people can that people can use. How about that? We throw in that. That's always good. Which contains drop the has. I think I already did on that. Mr. Cook says, dude, you need some content besides drama and this tired garbage. This is my content on this channel. Where do you think you're at? This is what I do on this channel. Literally what I do is I talk about philosophy and I talk about atheism and I talk about logic. Hello. I'm confused. Maki, outdone. Desire. What am I supposed to do on my channel besides what I want to do on my channel, which is about philosophy and talk about this kind of stuff? I'm really confused about somebody would tell me what to do on my own channel that my channel's about. That's just odd. You'll stop using it and recognize them as being epistemological attempt. All right, so that good so far. First paragraph, you guys have any issues in the first paragraph? Which is better than that? Is it? Like right here, you need to find a single solitary publication that contains. All right. Or any accredited. Let me put accredited just because. College that has it in its course. Who knows about uncredited college? I don't know why that's any other. I don't know why that's. Anyways, all right. So we good on the first paragraph. Everybody good? All right. Legend. Straightforward. If you look at the quadrants, it's going to have quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's going to be the same type of quadrants for any kind of Cartesian. You don't need either. Word either. People continue to use it, seem to fail that logic. All right, how about this as well? And I'll get rid of the ellipses. And hopefully, once you see the glaring issues with it, comma, you'll stop using it. And I changed it to. Oh wait, I changed it to which? Ash. Didn't I? What do you want me to change, Ash? Okay, so like I said, this is based on the Cartesian coordinate system. So the upper right-hand quadrant is 1, the upper left-hand quadrant is 2, the lower left-hand quadrant is 3, the lower right-hand quadrant is 4. Straight off any Cartesian XY system. Okay. All good so far? Okay, so this is where the actual argument starts to come into play to see what you guys think of it, okay? So I'm looking at quadrant 1 and quadrant 4, which is the upper right and upper right and lower right. Okay? And if you notice on them, both of them use Gnostic as claim to know. Both use Gnostic as claim to know. The Gnostic atheist claims to know that no gods exist. Claims to know that. Yeah, it's a lot of delays, and I apologize. It's. I have no additional delays on here, Maki, so it's just YouTube. I can't help that. The first that, which should be a which. I wanted to give some quick notes on the use of the epistemological and which people. Okay, change that to which then. All right, so going to the argument. Both use Gnostic as claim to know. The Gnostic atheist, did I put that in parentheses? No. Claims to know that no God exists, while the Gnostic theist claims to know that God does exist. So it reads easier. This is represented by Ka, not P, and Kap respectively. Again, this is why I need you guys to help the logic. So the first. What about that, Ash? I got it. I fixed it. I'll fix it. All right. So, so the first quadrant up there, right? If you logically look at it, it's saying that the Gnostic atheist claims to know God exists. claims to know God does not exist. But so that's represented as Ka del not P, which is the agent does not know P. Or agent knows that P. And actually, this would be. Well, I'm checking a little bit. All right, so let me check this. Gotta look at the. All right, so it says on the Gnostic Atheist, the Gnostic theist, the theist that believes a God exists, BAP, and knows God exists, claims to know. So this would be represented as KAP, KA not P, and BAP respectively. Actually, you know what? It's going to be backwards. Claims to believe. Believes a God exists and claims. So I got to put this backwards here. All right, so believes P and knows P. How's that? Is that better, guys? Make more sense? All right, so both use agnostic as claim to know. The Gnostic atheist claims to know that no God exists, or the Gnostic theist claims to believe a God exists and claims to know that God does not exist. This is represented as BAP and BA not P respectively. Okay, so far so good. However, quadrant 4 has theism as believes God exists, and Gnostic atheist as does not believe any God exists. Yep. Wait, actually quadrant 1. Yeah, and Gnostic atheist in quadrant 1. Specific in quadrant. However, quadrant 4, quadrant 4 has theism as believes God exists. It does not believes? Yes, believes, plural. And Gnostic atheist in quadrant 1 has does not believe any God exists. Are you already starting to see the problem? Knowledge is a subset of belief. And as such, the logical relationship would be the agent knows P implies agent believes P implies agent doesn't believe not P. For the negation of P, you have agent does not believe P implies believes does not P implies does not believe P. That I think is straightforward, right? And full stop should be inside the speech. What Ashley? Both use Gnostic as a claim to know. And full stop should be inside the speech. I don't know what you're asking. I'm confused there. What you're asking. Test it out, then let me know. All right, so in quadrant 4, you have the agent believes P and the agent knows P, right? That would be theism, Gnostic theism. So this is saying that the Gnostic theist believes God exists and claims to know God exists. Okay, but in quadrant 1, you have does not believe God exists, but claims to know God doesn't exist. Now, here's the problem that I'm running into. That in Gnostic atheists, notice that they're saying claims to know no God exists, but knowledge is a subset of belief. So if you claim to know there is no God, you have to believe there is no God. So why make it into the negative of does not believe any God exists? That doesn't make any sense when there's entailment there. If I know P, I therefore believe P. So Gnostic atheist would only make sense there if it's claims to know no God exists and believes God does not exist, which entails does not believe any God exists. See the problem there? Quadrant 1 should say believes a God exists. Gnostic atheist only makes sense in the positive epistemic status. It only makes sense to say you claim to know God does not exist if you believe God does not exist. So I say, so in quadrant 4, you have agent believes P and agent knows P, while in quadrant 1, you have agent does not believe P and agent knows P. This can only make logical sense if the agent also believes P, since, actually believes not P. Since knowledge implies belief, right? So since if you know P, that implies that you believe P, or if you know not P, that implies you believe not P. This is the only way quadrant 1 could make epistemic sense. If atheist has a positive epistemic status, since to know P is clearly a positive epistemic status. If you know God doesn't exist, that's a positive claim, right? That's a positive epistemic status, a positive belief, right? You can't know P unless you believe P. So I'm going to add in here so it makes sense. So you can't know not P if you don't believe not P. If you disagree, please explain. I'm going to be nice about this. Please explain how an agent can have a positive epistemic status of knowledge but fail to have a positive epistemic status of belief. Okay. What do you guys think of that so far? Let's go through that. Do you guys see what I'm saying in the quadrant there? If the theist, in the theist block there, it says, hey, Gnostic theism is a person who knows God exists and also believes God exists. That's sound. That makes sense, because if you know God exists, you have to believe God exists. That's an epistemic entailment. So what about Gnostic atheist? Claims to know God exists. Would also have to entail believing a God exists. So quadrant 1 and 4 both should be believes God exists. Do you guys agree? So saying does not believe doesn't make sense to put it in there. It makes sense to say believes a God exists. Which, by the way, will show why this completely thing collapses and makes no sense to do it that way. Because now at the bottom for quadrant 3 and 4 you have believes a God exists, but now I've just showed that quadrant 1 should also be believes a God exists. Because Gnostic atheist would only make sense if atheism is a positive claim. And I think I've substantiated that with the logic. And I've asked people here, if you disagree, please explain how an agent can have a positive epistemic status of knowledge, but fail to have a positive epistemic status of belief. You guys good so far? That makes sense? So quad 1 should be agent knows not P, and agent believes not P. Or believes God does not exist, plus God claims to know God does not exist. However, this is redundant, since knowing P is false implies believing P is false. This just reduces to not knowing P is false. You don't need to have anything about belief in there, right? You don't have to have anything about belief in there whatsoever. It's just, hey, I know God does not exist. That tells you all I needed to tell you about my belief, because I believe God does not exist, if that's the case, as a Gnostic atheist, if that's what they're using these terms as being, right? I mean, that's fine. Look, the term Gnostic atheist and Gnostic theist, I've never said are nonsensical. No, they're perfectly fine to do that. If you want to. I don't understand why you would mix and juxtapose these things together, but sure. I mean, if you want to say, look, I'm just not an atheist who believes there are no gods. I'm an atheist who knows there are no gods. And you want to call that Gnostic atheist? Okay, whatever. I think it's silly to use the term Gnostic in that way, because that's not how Gnostic is generally understood, but it's not nonsensical, because I can make sense of it. To be nonsensical, it means I don't have a way to make sense of it, but I can make sense of this. But the only way Gnostic atheist can be made sense of is if the atheist term is being used as a positive epistemic status. So, however, this is redundant, since, again, then if the agent knows P, then the agent believes P. This reduces to knows P is false. Think about it in the same way that believes P is false implies does not believe P, or believes the proposition is true implies does not believe the proposition is false. Right? If I believe the proposition is true, that implies I do not believe the proposition is false. Right? Believes P implies does not believe. Not P, actually. There we go. There we go. That's fixed. Again, in my head, I do all this at night, right? So this is why I go over it here, because even though I know what I want to say, my brain and my typing are not the same thing, obviously. So right here, it's just basically saying the agent believes the proposition is false, which believes the proposition, he doesn't believe the proposition is true. Or if you believe the proposition is true, it implies you don't believe the proposition is false. That's a straightforward, right? Nobody's ever had an issue with that. But when an atheist says, hey, look, I believe there are no gods, they don't go around saying, I believe there are no gods and I don't believe that the proposition is true. There's no reason to. It's redundant. If the agent believes P is false, then the agent does not believe P is true. But we merely just say believes false, as the rest does not believe P is superfluous, as understood by implication. Right? If an atheist out there says, look, I believe there are no gods, it's superfluous for them to say, I believe there are no gods and I do not believe the proposition is true. It's contained in the belief. Belinda says, I understand your point, but I honestly think that you'd be better served by breaking from the paragraph format here and providing a list of clear definitions and pose your thesis. This is my fourth writing on this, Linda. So, I mean, I have other things on here. So I've already written a bunch about this. And so I don't want to even provide any definitions, because some dishonest atheists out there go, oh, by definition that you have here. And I'm like, no, definitions are descriptive. So I'm not even trying to define anything here. I'm just going straight by looking at the image and then using the image to show the problems with the epistemological approach that it's taking. Right? So I don't want to do anything with definitions. I have other blog entries for that. I'm just straightforward showing, look, in the diagram, in quadrant 1, while it is true, it makes no sense to not explicitly point out that atheism is being used in the belief condition, as in a positive epistemic status. Right? And then all that kind of goes away because the Gnostic atheist is just saying, I know God exists. And that implies that you believe God exists. That implies you don't believe that the proposition is true. So, again, showing this chart has no real value of any kind. And, of course, I've just shown that quadrant 1, 3, and 4 all use atheism in the positive case. So, conclusion, quad 1 should just be knows not P, or claims to know God does not exist. That's all they need. That's my conclusion there. It's all it needs to be had, because it shows that if you know God exists, you also believe it and you don't believe it's true. Oh, and I should put in here, and that atheism, I'm going to put, only makes sense if understood in the positive case. What do you want? I'm going to keep stick with epistemic status. As a positive epistemic status. But you providing definitions as part of those paragraphs. What I mean, what definitions have I provided? I don't have any. The only definitions I have here are just straightforward with the predicates and the logic. Right? I have not defined any of these things. These are, I mean, I have. I mean, obviously this is negation, but I mean, people kind of understood that. I don't know what else I need to put in the legend, because again, I'm not trying to do anything as definition, because every time I hear somebody say by definition, I tune out. It's an argument to me. It's just a waste of time. All right. So as far as my my argument in 1 here, do you guys see any issues with this as far as the logic? I've concluded that quadrant 1 should just be agent knows God does not exist, or claims to know that God does not exist. That's all you need there. I've simplified it to the point where quadrant 1 just says, claims to know God does not exist. Yeah, the legend's not definitions. I agree. So by doing that, if you look at quadrant 4, all you got to do is have there is claims to know God exists. So the Gnostic theist claims to know God exists. The Gnostic atheist claims to know God does not exist. That's simple. That's simplified. That's all you need right there. Because it's implying that you also believe it, and then you don't believe it's true, or you don't believe it's false. So that's a very simplified version right there. So now let's look at the next one. When you say an atheist believes, that's a definition. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that given quadrant 1, if you believe, if you claim to know there is no God, that entails you believe it. There is no definition needed there about atheism. But atheism would only make sense there if it is the belief God does not exist, because you have to have the belief before you can have the knowledge. Knowledge is a subset of belief, so belief is a precursor to knowledge. Yes, I really yes, I really do stay up at night thinking about this stuff. Yes, I really do. Right? So in quadrant 1, Gnostic atheist, the word atheist would only make sense in the positive case. Yeah, Abdon, you make a great point. You make a very good point. You say if these terms were defined as it says on the chart, but they're not laid out as related, this would just be semantics, or right. But the chart is trying to convey something that doesn't make sense. Correct. And I'll show you why. So far, this actually does make sense. This quadrant does make sense. The other quadrant doesn't. I'll get into that. But this quadrant, as laid out, is not false. Okay, it is relating true information, but it leaves out a very important detail, that the atheist in quadrant 1 must accept atheism as a positive belief in order for that to make sense in that quadrant. Right? Because if you're accepting Gnostic atheist as somebody who knows God does not exist, it only makes sense if that atheist also believes God does not exist. That's first says knowledge is a subset of belief. That's where you're wrong, Steve. Well, you can go study epistemology and prove that to me, because in any belief first system of knowledge is a subset of belief. In JTP, justified true belief, in a tripart analysis, in a JTP plus, knowledge is a subset of belief. If you want to get into pragmatic theories of knowledge, then that's fine. But we're not talking about those, because the most common understanding of knowledge in the literature is justified true belief. And that's what I'm using here. So under the most common understanding of knowledge is a subset of belief. That's fact. So I cannot be wrong on that unless you can show me in justified true belief where belief is not a prerequisite in the tripart theory of knowledge that is a requirement for knowledge. So, yeah. I mean, if you're going to say that I'm wrong, you need to have an understanding of the topic, and you need to go find the evidence for that first. So go find me the evidence and then come back and show us, and I'll be happy to address that. I love when people think they can show me wrong, and if they do, I'd say thank you, and I fix it. Can't, then you're just talking out your ass. But okay, well, show me I'm wrong. First. Go get me a link showing that in justified true belief is not a precondition for knowledge. Go look. Go find. Go fetch. Good luck with that. I'm sure you're gonna really spend a lot of time going looking for that. So go look for it. How much you guys want to bet that he doesn't find any? You guys want to bet? Citation, please. Yeah, exactly. All right. So far in excuse me, in one here, do you guys agree with the argument so far? Go find me the link. I'm going. I know you can't link, but go find me the thing, and I'll link it. Belinda says, right. So you verbally explained in one sentence that what taking you several dense and complicated parts to explain. Well, I want it in detail so people can go back and use this when they go explain to somebody that this chart is stupid. This has nothing to do with the Gettier thought experiment. This has nothing to do with Gettier problems. Absolutely nothing to do with Gettier. It's a completely, I don't know what the hell Gettier has to do with anything with this. It's still, justified true belief is still the most common form of theory of knowledge. Now, in any belief first theory of knowledge, if you go read Dr. Linda Zabesky, she points out that all belief first conditions of theories of knowledge have some form of epistemic luck issue, which has some type of Gettier. We all know this who studies epistemology. So what? No, it's not. Justified true belief is not proven wrong by Gettier. You have a fundamental misunderstanding of Gettier problems. Every belief first condition has some type of Gettier problem, but then there's ways of trying to resolve that by adding what's called truth conditions to it, by adding sensitivity or security to it, by using possible world theory in conjunction with justified true belief, called justified true belief plus. So if you think it's been proven wrong, go right to Stanford Encyclopedia and their analysis of logic, and let them know that justified true belief was proven wrong. I'm sure they'll be happy to indulge your claim there, but it's just nonsense. All right, so you guys agree with one there? Put agree or disagree. If you agree with my argument from quadrant 1 versus 4, please put agree. If you disagree, put disagree, and then we'll have you explain why. Yeah, Zabowski is genius. I love Zabowski. She also had a great article against reliabilism using what's called the swamp swampy problem coming to do with espresso. She argued that under reliabilism, if you have a unreliable espresso maker and it makes a cup of coffee and you drink it, is that coffee any less good than a coffee maker that is reliable? Does it add any value to the taste of the coffee? Well, no, right? But I don't really accept reliabilism. I'm not a big fan of reliabilism, although I get the reason for it, right? I'm not against it. I mean, if you want to accept reliabilism, that's fine. But so Min says for $2, it should be agnostic atheist instead. I don't know what that means. Agnostic, again, why they're using agnostic, I have no idea. People think that agnostic and Gnostic are related, and they're not. They were never been related. Darth says, have you heard of the eternalism and the collapse of the Gettier problem? No. I do tend to externalism now these days. I vacillate between eternalism and externalism, although I do think externalism is a little bit better in some cases because you don't have to deny the epistemic closure principle as Nozick and Dresky does. I think that more by not denying the epistemic closure principle makes a little more sense to me, but he appeals to externalism to do so. But I'll check out that paper. Maybe I have. Again, I've read a lot. I just... Who wrote it here? Is that oh, that's Tim McGrew. Oh, okay. This does look familiar. Let me get back to you on that. I do know Tim McGrew, or I mean, I don't know him personally, but I know the name. Yeah, from Western Michigan. Yeah, let me get back to you on that because again, I know the name McGrew obviously because he's an epistemologist, but I'm not sure if I've actually fully read that paper, but I'm definitely going to check into it. Thank you, Darth. Maki says Zabesky's latest book, The Two Greatest Ideas, is pretty provocative. Sadly for our Brit friends, it won't be published there until February. Oh, I haven't checked it out yet. Oh, Min says agnostic / atheist. Yeah. Well, then again, I mean, theist / agnostic / atheist. Those are three different positions, right? Consuming Fire says, if you would have one explain your theological speed as ontological speech, you'd have a 10 panel for faces of a judgment of your speech. I don't know what that means. You? Hey, last verse, did you go find an article saying that justified true belief is no longer the standard theory of knowledge? Or that belief first does not exist in the analysis of knowledge? Because his Stanford's article on the analysis of of knowledge, it still uses justified true belief. I hate to break it to you. So Gettier did not disprove anything. Gettier just pointed out that in justified true belief there are examples of that where it fails to be the case, and then they started adding justified true belief plus. But that doesn't mean it's not a useful theory of knowledge. And by the way, last first, is it correct that under justified true belief, knowledge is a subset of belief? The answer is yes. Okay. So last first, is it true under justified true belief, knowledge is a subset of belief? Because you said that was wrong. You said knowledge isn't a subset of belief. Well, it is a subset of belief because we're using justified true belief. Correct? Kim says, I came here to find out what Steve McRae was about. I'm definitely not big-brained enough. So confuzzled. Oh, don't do that. No, Kim. No. We want people to understand this stuff. And I'm just going through this initially with people. When I put this on the blog and then I put it on, out there, I want people to be able to understand it. Everybody to understand it. I'm just wanting people that know about epistemology to help me write this to make sure that there are no errors in it. That's all. So stick around. The answer is no. So let me make this very clear. Last verse, you're saying under justified true belief, knowledge is not a prerequisite. Belief is not a prerequisite for knowledge, such that knowledge is let me rephrase this. You're saying that under justified true belief, belief is not a prerequisite for knowledge, and knowledge is not a subset of belief. Can you give me a citation on that, please? Because that's completely wrong. Darth says, Gettier pretty much showing no cases of knowledge despite having justified true belief. To a point, one could argue that there are no such things as knowledge, and skeptics would use that. But I still think I'm a pragmatist, right? I still think pragmatically we can use these things to say whether we have knowledge or not. Just because there's instances where it fails to be the case doesn't mean there are not instances where it does not fail to be the case, right? So I'm happy to use justified true belief as my theory of knowledge, recognizing that it may not always be the case, right? I'm okay with that. Because there's no perfect theory out there. Look, why do you think there's so many theories of truth? Right? Because there's no one perfect theory. Why do you think there's so many theories of justification? Because there's no one perfect theory. Why do you think there's so many different theories of morality? There's no one perfect theory. I never make a claim that any theory is perfect. That's why people tend to use the theories that kind of coordinate and congeal with their existing belief systems. This is the whole point of coherentism. Flamos for $2 says you should redraw the chart correctly for this blog. I don't know if there's a way to do so that, and I show at the very end Dr. Malpass's version, and I think that's the best way to go, Flamo. And so when we get there, I'll show you. But I'll try to redraw it as if you had to use this diagram, how it would be, and see how that works. But I haven't tried doing that yet. All right. So again, for my argument. For the quadrant 1 versus 4, yes if it's solid, no if you find a problem or it's not solid. So type yes if you agree with it, type no if you disagree with it, please. Tom, as a Huxleyan agnostic, one of the very few that I've ever met, I walk comfortably in your shade because you get all the flack and I almost never have to argue for my position specifically, and I appreciate that. I'm not a Huxleyan agnostic. I do understand Huxleyan agnosticism. I've known one other person on YouTube that took up the mantle of Huxleyan agnostic, and that was what was his name? Do you guys remember? He had that what was his name, Dan? He used to come around quite frequently. Tom. Very distinctive voice. Come on, I'm so bad at remembering names. But he had some issues, but he was a Huxleyan agnostic too. But I can't remember his name. The oppositional square thing worked well. Oh, absolutely. That's what I wrote my paper using, right? I think using the square of opposition is a great way to do that. Milwaukee Atheist, I don't learn anything from Steve. Too many big words. I will use monosyllabic words for you. Well, that's 2 words. Damn it, that's too fucking slow. God dang it. I'm still waiting for you guys to weigh in this. Yes, yeah, Xbox Fiend. Thank you, Xbox Fiend. So you knew who I was talking about, Xbox Fiend. So bad at names these days. Yeah, you and Xbox Fiend are the only 2 Huxleyan agnostics that I've ever met. No, and I'm not, by the way, you notice I've never argued against you on that. I understand what you mean by it and how you argue for it and how you would argue for it. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm not against Huxleyan agnosticism. I'm just not a Huxleyan agnostic, but I don't think it's a bad way to go. Steve, we need to affirm the proposition that God's joined us. That's funny. All right. Did you guys weigh in on this? Yes or no? Come on, help me out, guys. Yes, this is good. Or no, it has problems. Before I go into to 2. Kim's still confused. Well, let me make it very simple then. Hey Kim, you're the perfect person for this. You're the audience that I want. These other people, screw them. Screw you, Desire and Milwaukee and Kimomaki and Darth. I don't need you guys. I want Kim. Kim. All I'm saying on this, if you try to understand this, is that when people try to use these diagrams, they are having a fundamental bad approach, because in that first quadrant, right, the upper right, the blue, I'm not even going to use words. I'm going to use big words. The blue area, if you notice, it says Gnostic Atheist. These are the same people that try to say atheism is just a lack of belief, right? And my argument is, in the blue quadrant, the word atheist only makes sense if it's not just a lack of belief. It only makes sense if it is the belief that God does not exist. That's the problem, right? That's what I'm trying to show, and I think I've effectively done that. Linda says, the topic doesn't interest me, but I'm an academic editor, so if you want to Twitter DM a copy of them, I'm happy to help. Sure. Unless you're planning to post it today because I'm out. I probably will. I'm not going for academic accuracy on my blog. My paper has been vetted by multiple people for accuracy, and I made 150 edits in it since I've first came up with it. So I know that has been well vetted, Belinda. But I appreciate that. But I do want to kind of get this out tonight before I head out tonight. I'm gonna dress up all pretty tonight. I'm doing an experiment. I got a 10-day stubble. I've heard women are most attracted to men at the 10-day stubble mark. So I'm gonna be all fly. I'm not gonna drink tonight. I'm gonna go out and fly. I'm gonna go out to this local club that I know. I did get a phone number the other night, by the way. But I'm not interested in dating. I'm so gun shy. I've lost all interest in women when it comes to that. But I just want to see if having that 10-day stubble. I'm gonna ask people, does this work? Does this work for you? But anyways, side note. Can I get a yes or no, guys? Josiah, Chemo, Aflamo, yes or no? Verilion, does this make sense to you? Before I move on. I don't want to say where I go because, I have people that are after me. And I have some psychos after me, Darth. You really want to tell them where I'm heading tonight? No, I'm not going to say where I'm heading tonight. 10-day stubble is a beard. Is it really? I don't know. Is 10-day stubble a beard? I guess so, technically speaking. I'll go with that. But it's a very, very light beard. I don't want to go on to number 2 here until I get you guys to weigh in on this. Is my conclusion true? Quad 1 should just be agent knows that not P, or claims to know that God does not exist, and that atheism only makes sense if understood as a positive epistemist. Oh, yes. Awesome. Thank you. Good to go. Whew. Don't just placate me, guys. If you guys think this is wrong, I want to know. All right. So moving on to number 2. Hopefully you guys can read that. All right. Quadrant 3 of Agnostic Atheist is given as believes that God exists, plus doesn't claim to know this belief is true. Okay. So it's saying that the theist believes there's a God, but doesn't say that they're claiming that they know God exists. Okay. I can kind of understand that, right? I can kind of understand that. It's still held as a belief, though. Notice they're saying this is a belief of the theist. One problem here, obviously, is that it's superfluous, as theism is generally understood as believes a God exists, but doesn't claim to know this belief is true. As theism is a doxastic position with a positive epistemic status that the proposition is true. I'm going to add a comma there. So what I'm saying there is that it seems superfluous to me to even throw out there about anything about knowledge, because when somebody says, hey, I'm a theist, they're not making any claims to knowledge to begin with. So agnostic theist and theist are the same position. Why are my messages disappearing? They're not, Dragon King. You can see them. I mean, do you guys see that? It's the same thing. The theist is saying, look, I believe there's no God. I believe God exists. They're not making any claims to knowledge. So why does the differentiation? This is what I'm arguing in my argument. This is my argument that agnostic theist is superfluous. It means the same thing as theist. It's understood. It connotes the same thing as theist. Desire Hansen for $2 says, make more sense worth dollars. Yay. Comma after agnostic atheist. Where do I need a comma? Here? Yeah, there's no reason to bring knowledge in anything yet. That came walking. That's one of my big points. That there's just no reason to even have knowledge in any of this. But anyway, so quadrant 3. So this term agnostic theist is superfluous. Logically, it would be believes P and does not claim to know P. Oh, I got to throw agent in here. Got to throw A's in here. See, you guys messed me up. You guys didn't catch that. This should have A in here. I'm using agent. There's a reason for that, because I'm keeping in line with the notation that Burgess Jackson uses and Dr. Demi. So I actually had that wrong. You guys didn't catch my errors there. You're all fired. What I keep you guys around for? You didn't catch that. I don't want to add colors, but oh, they're not that one. Then where should I have a comma? Final places have an agnostic atheist. No, not there. Gotta go back. Where do I have agnostic atheist? Do I need a comma besides there? So the periods be inside the question mark. Where? Yes. No, that doesn't have a period in there. Where should the period be beside the question mark? The quotes. If you look at the diagram doesn't use periods. Okay, so again, logically, this would be the agent believes God exists and does not claim knowledge that God exists, comma, which reduces just to believes God exists. And I'm just going to get rid of these which. And I'm just going to say, and that is normally considered. And that is normally considered to be just called theism. Philosophy 10,001, you probably need to explain what positive epistemics is and the concept of JTP by adding a link at the beginning, just like what happened in chat. Possibly. Yes, I think you might be right on that. Positive epistemic status just means that you hold an assertion that is the case, right? And mentally speaking, if I believe that P is true, I'm saying that I'm holding it in the case mentally that the proposition is true. It has a positive epistemic status to it. In fact, I should be using status, not stance, right? Okay. Yeah, I think arguably the period goes outside because it's not part of the original quote. So it's superfluous to add does not know P here. Right? I mean, it's superfluous in quadrant 3. It just theist believes God exists. Quadrant 2 of the agnostic atheist, this is where the problems really start coming up, is given as does not believe God exists plus doesn't claim to know God exists. This suffers from the same problem as quadrant 3. Atheism is generally understood as a doxastic position, not a knowledge one. Regardless, if atheism is held as the agent doesn't believe P or doesn't believe P, neither imply any claim about knowledge. So it's ambiguous or superfluous to have agent doesn't believe P and agent doesn't know P. It just reduces to agent. Let's see. Agent doesn't believe P. So if you have agent believes P, agent believes not P but does not claim to have any knowledge claims, it just reduces to agent doesn't believe P. If you hold atheism is not the case, right, does not believe P, then you have does not believe P and does not claim to know P. Which, if you don't believe P, you clearly have no knowledge claim. It reduces to does not believe P. Because in either case, there's no claim to knowledge. So it's just superfluous. If you don't believe not P, you can clearly you clearly have no claim, knowledge claim, which just reduces to does not believe not P. Let me make sure this makes sense. So it's either ambiguous or superfluous to have the agent does not believe P and does not claim to know P, as that just reduces to agent does not believe P. If you hold atheism in the negative, right? If you hold atheism as does not believe P, then you have does not believe P and does not claim to know not P. Which, if you don't believe not P, then again you clearly have no claim to knowledge, and it reduces just to does not believe not P. So there we go. That makes more sense. So what I'm saying here is if you don't believe P, right, if you don't believe that gods exist, you're not having a knowledge claim about God not existing. Now, it could be you believe that there are no gods, right? It could be the case, but you're not making any claim just by saying, I don't believe God exists. Matter of fact, you could, think about this. This is interesting here, because I didn't think about this. A theist who claims God exists, right? And they makes it as a knowledge claim. If the theist says, I know there are no gods, he does not believe that God does not exist. So if he says, I do not believe God does not exist, that does not make any knowledge claims, even though he might have a claim to knowledge that God exists. So it's ambiguous. Tom says, aren't these all basically claims about knowledge claims? I think it could be the other way around. Am I missing something? No, these are all dostastic claims. When you say I think it is the case that God exists, that's just belief. That's not knowledge claim. Knowledge claim is going to only be knowledge if you claim I know. And if you don't say I know, then you're not making a knowledge claim. You're just making a belief claim. In the latter case, however, it oddly becomes the only quadrant in which you can have atheism, as does not believe the proposition is true. There you go. Okay, it's the only case where atheism is shown as in the negative. In the latter case, quadrant 1, 3, and 4 only makes sense if there's some positive epistemic status, which I've already shown. Quadrant 2 and quadrant 3 have theism as a positive epistemic status, while quad 1 has a positive epistemic status as a knowledge claim, as explained, implies a belief as a positive epistemic status. We were that. Quadrant 1 has a positive epistemic status. This I'm going to get rid of these witches. That, as it has been explained, implies a belief with a positive epistemic status. There we go. So what I'm saying here is that quadrant 2 is the only one that has the ability to even have atheism as the non-positive epistemic status, but then it's non-positional. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't make sense to do it that way, because knowledge is a subset of belief. But the quadrant 1, 3, and 4 I've shown has to have some kind of positive belief system, right? Some kind of belief state. But quadrant 2, agnostic atheist here, it would make sense in the positive case, but then it reduces down to just atheist, right? If agnostic atheism in quadrant true is atheism in the positive case, it just reduces to belief. But if you want to make it in the non-belief case, right? Okay, but now you have an odd man out. You have the only block in here, only quadrant that has atheism in the weak case, which breaks any kind of symmetry. So why is quad 2 the odd man out, being that is a non-position? I do not believe P and I don't know P. Okay, well that's a non-position. In addition, quad 2 is the only quadrant that doesn't have a positive epistemic status. Then the symmetry being gone, then the symmetry is gone here. Oh, the symmetry here is, here we go. Then the symmetry here is obviously broken. For it to keep a symmetrical relationship, quad 2 should be in believes P is false and does not claim knowledge that P is false. Agent believes P but doesn't know P. That's to keep the symmetrical relationship. Because if quadrant 3 and 4 believes God exists, quadrant 1 believes God does not exist. To keep that symmetry, quadrant 2 needs to be God believes God does not exist. So okay, so I kind of do try to work it out here to make it sense. For this chart to even begin to make sense, before Gnostic atheist they have it as does not believe and does not believe it's false, but wait here, Gnostic atheist. Right, let me see. Gnostic atheist doesn't believe that's true and does claim that it's false. Is this right? Gnostic atheist does not believe it's true and claims that it's false. This would be logically what quadrant 1 is, correct? Agnostic atheist in quadrant 2 does not believe it false and doesn't claim to know that it's false. Okay, this is correct. But again, now you have two knots. It's a non-position. It doesn't give you anything. It's just I don't do this and I don't do that. Agent doesn't do this. Agent doesn't do that. The non-position here. This is the odd man out. It's the only one that's a non-position at that point. Agnostic theist believes that God exists but doesn't claim it as knowledge. Okay, and Gnostic theist believes God exists and claims it as knowledge. Okay, so this is a position. This is a direct position. These two are not, this is a direct position because it's knowledge claim. This is the only one that's an odd man out. This is a non-position. Again, if you go in for a diagram that wants to show some kind of symmetrical relationships, this breaks that symmetry right there. Nadia says, can you include a paragraph in the blog that explains what this issue is near and dear to your heart and why it could be relevant for others? Sure. But, I mean, basically people should know is that I want atheists to be better critical thinkers. And when they use stuff like this, it shows that they don't think critically, right? Because I've explained this multiple times. Other people have explained this multiple times. Other people have blogs on this, not just mine. There's Anderson's Reason that explains this, and there's another blog out there by a guy named Kelly something or other. He explains this pretty well too. So I'm not the only one that has a problem with this. Even Matt Dillahunty agrees that agnostic atheism in the weak case, or even the strong case, doesn't make any sense. He agrees that this is messed up. He doesn't use these terms any longer. Matt Dillahunty, right? I mean, he's the atheist go-to guy. He thinks that these diagrams are messed up. So I want non-believers like myself to be better critical thinkers, and they're not when they use this crap, because this is like the argument rocks are atheists. This is the flat earth of epistemology, and they don't seem to understand why, and they don't even try to. All right, so that's before. Do you guys agree that this is before? This looks right to you guys there? So I changed it to this. It at least makes some sense. Then it has to be either for Gnostic atheist believes that the proposition is false and claims to know the proposition is false, since knowledge knowledge implies belief. Agnostic atheist would only make sense as a positive belief to make it a position, right? Gnostic theist believes God exists and does not claim it as knowledge. And Gnostic theist believes God exists and claims it knowledge. This makes perfectly fine sense. This makes sense, right? But the problem is you'll see that they reduce down from there. This makes more sense, and this makes more sense, right? But all of you notice here, all these have belief condition as positive. All these are beliefs. There's nothing here that says I do not believe, because just saying that I do not believe is ambiguous. And it breaks the symmetry, because here you have a case of an agnostic atheist that has no position. So I say then, of course, we can see that quad 2 just reduces to believes God doesn't exist. And quad 3 reduces to believes God does exist. Meaning that the adding agnostic is superfluous. To make it even further sense as we reduce it, Gnostic atheist believes God does not exist and knows God does not exist, which just reduces down to Ka, not P. Okay, so the quadrant 2, atheist just reduces down to believes God does not exist. Theist reduces to God does believe God exists. And the Gnostic theist believes that God does not exist. Believes that God does exist and knows God is not. God damn it. Gnostic theist believes God exists and know God exists, which just reduces down to knows God exists. You don't need the belief at that point, because that's entailed by the knowledge. Okay? Tom says, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Huxley agnostic does not fall into any of these 4 quadrants, or what am I missing? You're right. Yeah, the Huxley agnostic basically says, we have the Huxley agnostic is more position on the knowability of God. The Huxley agnostic says, look, the theist and the atheist has no right to even say they believe one way or another. The Huxley agnostic says that we have no idea how to even begin by using the scientific method to approach these things, because agnosticism, by the Huxleyan approach, was a scientific method. It was an early scientific method that has some incorporations of logical positivism to it. But the Huxley agnostic as methodology, right? Because even Huxley, says explicitly, agnosticism is a method, not just a position. It's a method for acquiring knowledge using the scientific method and using a bit of a logical positivism. So the Huxley agnostic says, look, we can't know one way or another whether gods exist. Why bother even talking about it? You have no claim to belief either way, because we cannot know one way or another using that approach. Because logical positivism, if you remember, logical positivism held that we can only know something under 2 conditions. One, if it's empirically verifiable using the verification principle, which we've all determined is self-refuting. Verificationism is self-refuting. So by invoking verificationism for logical positivism doesn't work. But logical positivism held the only way you can actually know something or claim knowledge is one, if you empirically verify it, or two, that it's a priori knowledge. You don't go around empirically verifying that X equals X or A equals A, law of identity. We can know that a priori, and logical positivists, we're fine with that. If you can logically prove something, that's knowledge. So to a logical positivist, if you can prove it to be the case or you can empirically verify it to be the case, you can call it knowledge. So I go on to say we can then notice the entire y-axis, negative y, goes away as needed from the origin of the left, which effectively removes the need for the entire axis. We can use a single axial diagram to show agnostic relationship if the person is dead set on using those labels. Using Dr. Malpass's diagram, which doesn't use A for agent, you can see here, make sure you can see that on the outside. Yeah, you guys can see that. All right, so it's not that hard to show the whole thing in context here. There we go. If you look at Malpass's diagram, this is one of his views. Now, I'm not saying he subscribes to this view. There are other views out there, but this is one of his views, and this is the one I use, and I think it's most commonly used by reading the literature, that the Gnostic atheist would be over here on the left-hand side as K, not P, knows God does not exist, which entails believes God does not exist, right? So the atheist would be all that. Somebody who knows God does not exist. If you go to the way far end, zero probability, right? That's actually certainty. So the atheist would entail anybody who knows God does not exist or believes God does not exist. On the far right side, you have theist, anybody who believes God exists or claims to know God exists. Right? So, but if you notice though, knows God exists is a subset of believes God exists. You can't get to know P unless you go through BP first. It is a subset. And then the Gnostic has no position either way. Does not believe P and does not believe not P. So you don't need a multi-axial approach to this. It's superfluous, or this is what I've been saying all along. The multi-axial approach is either superfluous, ambiguous, or nonsensical, depending on how you want to approach it. And by the way, that one diagram I used is not the only diagram out there. There's other diagrams that don't say the same things. One of them actually says Gnostic atheist is somebody who's certain there are no gods. Really? Really? Very few atheists go around saying they're certain there are no gods. Now, it does happen. And the theists go around saying, I'm certain there is a God. Yeah, they exist. But they're rare. You know, I think it's rare. Because, I mean, if you're certain God exists, then I think, what's the point of having faith? But whatever. I think it's a hard bar to reach to say that you're certain that there's a God or no God. But whatever. But 0 and 1 in here would imply certainty. Right? As far as we can get as far as epistemic certainty. We're not talking about Descartes certainty or epistemic certainty in the sense of Descartes. You know, that's a completely different use of the term. But as far as our certainty within the scope of the system, then 0 would be the probability of God existing is none. 1 would be a certainty. So if you know God exists and you're certain, that would be 1. Anything lower than that, then certainty. 50 Shades of Bish says, I've seen all these diagrams. Curious, what do you think of RH negatives? I don't know what that is. So knowing PRE would be Gnostic theist. So this side here is Gnostic theist over here. BP would be theist right here. B not P would be atheist over here, and not P in the middle here. Not BP and not B not P would be agnostic. And there you go. And actually, I guess I would have to add in this one. Working in Google Docs here. Okay, so I'd have to put B atheist. I know what I'm doing here. I'm fixing it. I've got this. I don't know. I guess I don't. I guess that actually explains it, right? Yeah, that explains it. All right, so KP area would be agnostic. Yeah. Yeah, this is fine. That's all I need. So the single axial approach right here, this schema worked fine demonstrating the phrase agnostic atheist is either ambiguous or superfluous, and the multi-axial diagrams are epistemologically untenable. That's my conclusion. And then so going back to here, my quadrant 2 versus 3, do you guys think this makes sense? That this is the only odd man out. The only quadrant 2 is the only quadrant that doesn't have any kind of positive epistemic status, which means that the symmetry, the whole point of the diagram, is broken. You have a non-position. You know, you don't know anything about the belief of the person. If the person is saying, I don't believe and I don't know, okay, what is it that your stance then? That would be the agnostic, just agnostic. It just boils down to agnostic at that point. So if the agnostic atheist is not held in the positive epistemic status, then an agnostic atheist is the same thing as what agnostic would say. But it doesn't tell you anything, because that applies to all the other positions as well, to some degree. And think about this: if agnostic atheist is going to be, let's see, does not. Let me write this in logic here. So logically, this is does not believe P and not P. Yeah. All right. Now look at this very carefully here. Look at this, guys. This could apply to other positions, right? A theist, this would apply to. Well, no, Jimmy. I mean, I'm not sorry, not theist. Any atheist, this would apply to. Does not believe that God exists, but doesn't claim knowledge. Okay, so what kind of atheist are you? Do you make it? I mean, are you a Gnostic atheist that claims knowledge? Are you an atheist that believes? This doesn't tell me anything. This is a non-position. The agnostic would hold to this as well. I don't believe P is true. I don't claim to know P is true. I don't believe P is false. I don't claim to know P is false. Right? This is what an agnostic would be. And how do I write that in there? Let's see if I can write that in there. In that case, let me write in here. If, however, it is kept as this becomes indistinguishable. I type it. Becomes indistinguishable from agnostic being as neither make any knowledge claims, making agnostic atheist in this case, that case, yeah, I don't know if I can make that claim. Making agnostic atheist. Yeah, I can't make that claim. It collapses because there are other positions. Oh no, I can't make that case if I don't without any positive epistemic status. I've already proven that in other things I've done. If there is no positive status. In that case, it. All right. Shimamaki says, Gnostic atheist sort of sounds like a third order belief position. Second order is all that's needed. I don't know what. Yeah. Gnostic atheist just collapses to either agnostic or to atheist. There's no other way around it, logic. So in one case, agnostic atheist merely reduces atheist. Atheist has positive status, or to agnostic if not. There you go. Hey, the bitch. Sorry, Steve. I'm new here. I just saw the diagrams. I wanted to ask. Yes, I'm. RH negative is type of blood type. I'm not sure. Lenny says, yes, but non-position is correct diagram. We're cutting the sets out. Oh, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that's what's specifically stated here. I'm not saying what's specified is not correct as far as what it's stating. I'm saying that it breaks the symmetry. And I'm saying it doesn't make much sense to do it that way. Because the Gnostic atheist only can make sense if atheism is held in the positive case. Which means none of this makes sense if atheism is not in the positive case. Right? Because I already proved or demonstrated in one here that quadrant 1 only makes sense in the positive case, because if you're going to claim knowledge, you have to have the belief. And so the only one that breaks that is the agnostic atheist, because you can't make the claim there's a positive epistemic status there because you don't know. And so there's only two cases that it could be. The agnostic atheist is saying, I just don't believe and I don't know, which is ambiguous, right? Which just breaks down to agnostic as far as you can really tell. Or it's, I don't believe God exists, but I'm not claiming it as knowledge. I have no knowledge coming either way, which would apply to an atheist who believes there are no gods. Because if an atheist believes there are no gods, they don't believe God exists, and they're not making any claims anyways, which means agnostic atheism in the positive case, just as atheism, and the agnostic atheism in the negative case is just agnostic. It's ambiguous. It's completely ambiguous. So we can conclude atheist in quadrant 2 is ambiguous. There you go. Tom says, I think a lot of the trouble comes from the etymology. Agnostic atheist means knowledge, no knowledge. And that's not where it comes from. I mean, again, agnostic was not etymologically related to Gnostic as far as where they came from. It was a neologism, right? And so N-O-N-S just meant the illusions of having knowledge. And the Gnostic had to do with the 2nd century form of Christianity that felt that if you had hidden knowledge, you can get to the divine. They were completely unrelated, etymologically speaking. One was a new word that was created. And it was slightly, and I admit, Thomas Stanley Huxley did it to put a little nudge to what he considered to be the modern Gnostics of the time. It was a slight against them. He was insulting them by using N-O-S. At least I believe so. I believe he was being insulting them. All right, so let's go through this again, see what you guys think. Quadrant 3 of agnostic atheist is given as believes God exists, but doesn't claim to know this is true. One problem here, obviously, is that this is superfluous, as theism is generally understood as it believes a God exists, but doesn't claim to know this. As atheism is in a didactic position with a positive epistemic status. True. Okay. So this term, agnostic theist, is superfluous. Yes. Logically, it would be believes P is true, but does not claim P is true, which just reduces to believes true. And that is normally to be considered just called, I don't like this way this worded, and that is normally considered to be just known as a, I'm going to say this, known theism. It is superfluous to add does not know P here. Quadrant 2. Quadrant 2 of agnostic atheist is given as does not believe any God exists, plus doesn't claim to know God that no God exists. Logically, this is does not believe P, and does not claim to know. This suffers from the same problem as quadrant 3. Atheism is generally understood as a dos exposition, not a knowledge one. And that's fine. No matter what you want to define atheism as, it's neither In neither case, it's a knowledge claim. Regardless if atheism is held as believes P is false or does not believe P is true, yeah, I'll make sure. That's why I want to check this stuff. Regardless if atheism is held as believes P is false or does not believe P is true, neither can imply a claim about knowledge. So it is either ambiguous or superfluous to have does not believe P is true and does not claim to know that is false. Because that just reduces does not believe true. Because if I say, look, I believe God doesn't exist, but I'm not making any knowledge claim, okay, then why add it? You're just saying I don't believe God exists. It adds nothing to add that knowledge claim to it, or that lack of knowledge claim, right? If I say I believe proposition is true, I'm not making any claim to knowledge. So why point it out that I don't have a claim to knowledge? If in the latter case, however, it oddly becomes the only quadrant in which you can have atheism as does not believe God exists. Quadrant 1, 3, and 4 only makes sense if there's some positive epistemic status. Quadrant 2 and 3 have theism as a positive epistemic status, and quadrant 1 has a positive epistemic status and is a knowledge claim that has been explained, implies a belief with a positive epistemic status. All right, so what do you guys think of this? I mean, does it make sense? I don't want to go too long because I gotta run here. I gotta get ready, but I think this is pretty well good to go for my blog. I can always go in and edit afterwards. But do you guys think that it's solid so far? And again, once it goes public, I mean, people can pick it apart and I'll fix things, right? But I think as it stands, does it make sense? My argument that quadrant 1 is only going to make sense if atheism is held in the positive case. And I might add my own image to it. I might do that before I leave. And then quadrant 2 only makes sense in the positive case as well, because if not, it's the odd man out because it breaks symmetry, non-position. And that if you have it in the non-positive epistemic status, it reduces to agnostic. And if you have it in the positive, it just reduces to atheism. So it's ambiguous. So I think that this really does explain why this chart is just ridiculous. There's no use for it. So, all right. So, tell me, guys, publish, don't publish, publish, or don't publish. Kano says publish, and I have to listen to her. Now it hurts me emotionally speaking. No, does not hurt me. I mean, in fact, I gotta tell you, I have not been happier since I moved in with Kano. She is like, I gotta tell you, one of the all-time greatest people I've ever met in my entire life. I mean, she is my family. She's like my sister. Anybody messes with her, I will hunt them down and do bad things. That is a threat. I do mean that as a threat. Not that I would ever actually harm anybody or actually physically touch anybody or even do anything online, but I will send very strong negative emotional waves to that person and attempt to have their brain explode mentally. That's my threat. If you ever go after Kano, I'm going to be mentally just trying to by telekinesis make your brain explode because you're a horrible freaking human being. Is that okay, Kano? Yeah. She says yes. She doesn't mind me doing that. Brilliant says, is this a formal style, perhaps? Remove leading statements like merely reduces and just have reduce. Okay, you're saying merely is using it as a weasel word. I happen to agree with that. I happen to agree with you there. So in one case, an atheist reduces to merely is a weasel word. I get that, but if the agent doesn't believe P is true, but let's see. If an agent believes P is false, then the agent does not believe P is true and can just say believes false. How about that? I got rid of the weasel word, Brilliant. Yeah, I'm not going to drink tonight. I'm not going to drink. I drink so very rarely. I'm not going to drink tonight. I'm going to go have Diet Coke. Yeah, I can't see any flaws right now either. That's what. See, you guys notice though when I do this in my head, I know what I'm going for, but when I go over it, the next day, I have to go back and edit a lot of the stuff because that's how my brain works. I just throw this all out there and then I go back and reread it and then I fix it, even though because I know what I'm going for. But the journal, the editor corrected this stuff. I mean, I'm in Google Docs right now. This corrects all that stuff. I don't see any errors. That's it. I'm gonna try to make my own diagram where it would work, but I don't know. We'll see. All right, guys, thanks for watching this. I will let you know how my experiment. Do you guys want to know how my experiment works tonight? I mean, my 10-day double experiment works tonight. I mean, I've only been out 2 nights. The first night, I swear to God, I'm not even fronting you. I've only been out 2 nights to the place that I've gone to for 20 years. And I mean, I dated the waitress there 30 years ago. I know everybody. I know the owners. But only about 2 nights. The first night I went out, I actually, ended up, I'm not going to go into my details, but I ended up, meeting a girl, and we had fun that night. And then the second night, I got a girl's phone number. I mean, I'm not trying to date anybody. I'm not trying to hook up anybody. I'm not looking for hookups. I'm over it. I just so done. But it was flattering. I mean, the 2 times I went out, women took notice of me. That's something I needed because I've had some horrifying experiences, obviously. It was just that it just made me feel good. People know I've been down and I've had a lot of shit going on, but the 2 times I've been out, it made me feel nice. And I find nothing wrong with that. I mean, I told you guys I had a guy sit next to me. I was feeling down that night. The guy sat next to me and he's like, yeah, I just want you to know you're pretty. I'm like, I was flattered by it. Seriously flattered by it. It made my night. It totally changed my entire disposition. Actually, no, I'm sorry. There's been 3 nights. So 2 nights that happened. The 3rd night, nothing. Wow, you're almost lucky I didn't turn you into YouTube for threats. Yeah, me mentally wanting to, make somebody's brain explode through telekinesis. I don't think YouTube is going to take as a credible threat. Call me fire. I mean, call me crazy fire. Like I said, I would never actually go out and harm anybody. An agnostic atheist can reject P and not P. The error theory. Stephen, yeah, no, and that's a whole different ballgame, right? I mean, Stephen knows that there's 2 types of error theories. There's Mackey's error theory, which just says that, yes, these are propositional, like things, moral theories do express moral propositions, but they're all false. And then Aries propositional error theories that, hey, look, these are just don't even have any semantic content to them. So yes, an agnostic atheist can get into things like error theory, and that's fine. But I mean, as far as my argument goes here, Hoyt, I think I've pretty well established that agnostic atheists using those multi-axis diagrams are just stupid. People need to stop doing it because it is either ambiguous or superfluous, depending how you look at it. I've established by conclusion, by logic, that quadrant 1 only makes sense if atheism held in the positive status, and I've concluded that quadrant 2 can be either in the positive or the non-positive status, but if it's in the positive status, it reduces to atheism. If it's the non-positive status, it reduces to agnosticism. Therefore, it is ambiguous. Yay, go Steve. All right, guys, I will publish this sometime later on tonight, probably when I get back. I don't know. I appreciate you guys helping with this. This is what I love when you guys help me with this because it susses my thoughts out. That, guys, I'm going to bid you guys tonight, and I'll let you guys know how it goes tonight with my 10-day stubble. Good night. Shut up, kiddo. She's laughing at me. Damn it. Night.